welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. This is the end of an era. This is Empire of the Dawn, Jay Kristoff. Welcome back to FP Studios.
Thanks. Good to be back.
The third book. Oh my god.
End of the trilogy.
Yeah, it's crazy. We first spoke with each other during lockdown.
Yeah.
Which was a whole other crazy.
The city where I live, Melbourne, we were for a really long time the most locked down city in the entire world.
Wow.
I think we got beaten in the end by Sao Paulo or something, but we did 274 days lockdown.
My god.
Yeah, I was writing the first book during that as well, which might explain why it got so dark.
Yeah, it went places. Doesn't explain about the other ones.
No, I mean, kind of time was set by the first one, so yeah, ran through to the third.
I suppose over in the UK we had the weird thing where certain parts of the country were locked down and certain parts weren't.
Yeah, I mean, we had the same in Australia. On the West Coast, they didn't get the virus at all, and they just shut their borders and carried on. Like, my folks live there and my sisters live on the West Coast. Their life was completely normal, and meanwhile we were in zombie apocalypse in the East Coast, so lucky them.
Because I was still in London at the time, and you'd have police were stopping cars to see where you were going,
right,
and stuff.
Yeah,
so
we had. I think we had a certain radius, 5 kilometres, that we could go for, but we had a bunch of different lockdowns with a bunch of different rules.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did 274 days in the end, not consecutively, but over the course of a year and a half. So it's pretty hectic.
That's crazy. I mean, I'm glad that that hasn't become our norm, right?
Yeah.
So, yes. I suppose minor spoilers, because we're on book 3 now, right? And
sure.
Most people who are watching this, I would like to think,
probably read the first or the second one.
Probably read at least one.
If you haven't, you should stop.
Yeah,
you should stop. You should go read it.
Yeah, stop listening to this right now. But come back to it. So crazy. What can you tell us about the third book? Did it all pan out as you thought? Is it completely different how you thought it's going to be?
It did and it didn't. Okay. When I started writing the book, I had a rough idea of who was going to be on stage for the finale, but I didn't know how that finale was going to play out. And about halfway through writing this one, it was actually at the end of the tour for Damned, I met up with a buddy of mine, and we lived in a city called Toledo in Spain for a month. Just basically shut the door and turned off social media and wrote. And it's this beautiful old walled fortress city. All the fortifications still mostly intact, so I would go for a walk in the morning, I would walk around the walls, and then basically smash words kind of morning and night either side of those walks. And about 2 weeks into that, I was walking on the walls one day, and it was like an idea fell out of the sky. I can't describe it any better than that. I've tried every stop on this tour, I've tried to explain the story, and there's no better way to articulate it than that. But the idea was a bit weird and a bit scary, but it was really exciting, so I went away and wrote it over the course of the next couple of days, and at the end of writing it, I knew that it was just perfect to just fit the book. So it slightly changed the end dynamic that I imagined, but yeah, it turned out in a way that I expected, but a way that I didn't because of that change. But the last half of writing the book, because of that idea, it was like riding a bike downhill. It was like the book knew exactly what it wanted to do.
Okay.
And I've never had that happen to me before, and it will probably never happen again. And I didn't enjoy it while I was doing it. I should have taken advantage of it. But yeah, it was like the book just knew what it wanted to be at that point. And I was just the conduit for it, which sounds a little bit woo-woo, but it was also a sign that I was on the right track. When the words were kind of flowing that well, it told me that I was heading in the right direction. So yeah, it was really fun.
And what can kind of people expect other than potentially destroying their very souls?
I mean, it's the finale, so it's you've spent 2 books building a sandcastle at the beach, and the third book is when you get to knock it all down. But you understand what Dior's ultimate role is going to be, and how Gabe is going to play into that. I mean, ultimately the story is Dior's, but it's being told by Gabe and Celine. You figure out what the Asani are, you learn where Astrinka came from and what role she has to play in the finale. so all the questions that have been set up by the first two are answered in the third. I don't think I left anything unanswered. There's a couple of things ambiguous, you can't cover off anything, but yeah, basically everything that you need to know will be revealed by the end of the book.
Okay.
In theory.
In theory.
In theory.
Were you ever tempted to kind of make Dior a POV character as well, or were you always just like, I'm going to keep this like jewel?
Yeah, no. Obviously, Gabe and Celine are telling the story, so they're alive. They have to be there as narrators, but everybody else, I wanted there to be a sense of ambiguity, whether they made it through or not. The less people I use as narrators, the more ambiguity that placed over the cast. So, yeah, I already revealed that two people at least have to make it to the finale of the book, but everyone else I wanted a question mark over. So, but also, it was a more interesting story to tell. It was a more interesting way into the story to have it told by other people. She's this semi-mythical figure, so the less time you actually spend with her and the more time you spend with the people who knew her, the easier it is to maintain that sense of legend about her, because you're only hearing about her secondhand, you don't actually see her in the real. So that was a way to kind of build up the mystique of the character as well.
I bet there's been some gorgeous like fan art and stuff.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. I'm not sure what it is about my books, but the fan art community have always been amazing to me. It kind of started with the Nevernight books and the Empire as well. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is about in the novels, maybe because there's illustrations in this one as well, that kind of sets a tone, but yeah, there's incredibly gifted people out there. My walls in my study are kind of covered with fan art. There's not a lot of space left on my study walls. They've actually started to spill out to the hallway outside my study, which annoys my wife, but yeah, I'm really fortunate in that sense. Like, there's just some incredibly talented people out there that spend enormous amounts of time kind of bringing these characters to life. Yeah, so I'm very grateful.
I think one of the things I particularly love about your books is, even though they are very dark, and yeah, you don't know, one minute you're screaming, the next minute you're crying, you know, it takes you all over the place, but there is so much heart in there. There is even hope, dare I say, at some points where you're just like, oh, maybe so and so will make it, or maybe, you know, that balancing act between everything is going wrong, but also that you have these like positive relationships in a way, that you have the kind of the camaraderie between like Leon and you know, the rest of the kind of like silver you know, like hunters and stuff. The fact that you almost have like a like the sibling relationship, as weird as that is. How important are those relationships, and I suppose that heart to your series?
I mean, it is the core of it, really. I'm writing a pretty dark book, but there's a pact struck between storyteller and audience. You kind of know in the end that things are going to work out okay-ish, because no one wants to read a story where the villain is standing atop a pile of bodies laughing maniacally, unless that's the point of the book. But you kind of know that the good guys are going to win. It's not a question of whether they win or lose, it's a question of what they pay to get there. Gabriel says as much in the third book. But yeah, I mean, that thread of hope is what keeps you going in a story that would otherwise just be relentlessly bleak. It's not really about, the story is never really about the world or the antagonists. It's about the way that the people that you hopefully fall in love with deal with all the darkness around them. And the best way to do that is to, find light in the relationships that they find along the way. So, Gabe and Dior's relationship is at the heart of the book. It's kind of the foundation of everything that comes thereafter. Gabe starts the novel pretty hopeless and in a terrible place, and has that conversation with Aaron at the end of the book one that, basically makes him, he's lost his faith in religious institutions and God. He decides to place his faith in Dior instead, and kind of devote his life to making sure she gets to do what she needs to do. But those threads kind of permeate all the other relationships, hopefully, as well. And yeah, the relationship between Gabe and Aaron in particular is one of kind of brotherly love. They grew up together. They're broken apart, 10, 12 years, but sometimes you have people in your life where you can spend 10 years apart and you get back together and it's like you never left each other behind. You just pick up a conversation that happened a decade ago and just roll with it. So they have that kind of relationship. They know each other probably better than anybody else does in the book. And some of the quiet moments just between the two of them are my favourite parts of the novel, I think. It's just two guys who know each other well enough that they almost don't need to talk. So yeah, those relationships really are kind of foundational, and they stop, hopefully, the book drifting into this terrible swamp of darkness and despair, because at the end of the day, no one really wants to read that. You know, you enjoy the idea that things might go horribly, you enjoy the fear that comes of the knowledge that not everyone is going to make it through okay, but yeah, ultimately you're telling a story about victory and the price thereof rather than defeat.
I suppose there's an interesting change and shift that's kind of happened in fantasy probably in the last 5-10 years, where for a lot of the kind of traditional fantasy it was very much, you know, coming of age hero, and they were always quite lovable, quite likable characters, that whereas now our heroes are a lot more flawed and a lot more kind of
complex. Hopefully.
Yeah,
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the kind of fantasy you're writing. I think there are still authors out there who are doing kind of traditionally heroic stuff, and the characters therein are more like paragons. Someone like Brandon, for example, he's writing that kind of epic level heroic fantasy, which is great. I think there's always going to be a place for those kind of stories. But yeah, I prefer getting down into the muck and the mud, finding the best in bad situations, having good people do terrible things for the right reasons, having people's moral cause kind of challenged by the people that they meet in the situations they get placed in along the way. You learn who someone is when they're placed under duress. It's easier to love somebody on the days that are easy. You find out what your love is made of on the days that are hard. It's easier to have a moral code when that's not being challenged. You kind of learn who you are when you're placed at the tip of the blade, so to speak. So yeah, I like playing in morally grey spaces. To me, they're more interesting characters to write and to read. They're the kind of characters that I enjoy reading for fun. So I think I kind of naturally gravitate towards them when I'm writing as well, just because there's more depth to them. There's different ways to stress test them, and hopefully, you know, they still come out at the end as likable characters. You understand why they're doing what they're doing, even though they might be doing terrible things. If you understand what's at the heart of their decision, which hopefully is something like those relationships, those loves that we were talking about before, then that stops them straying completely into villain territory. In the initial draft of Vampire, the first scene that I ever wrote was when Gabe has to kill his own horse because it gets injured. I still get letters about that today. People are upset about it.
It's always the animals that get people, right?
Yeah. Killing horses became a thing in this series. But he had to kill his own horse, and he was on foot and injured and being chased by a bunch of wretched. So he had to steal another horse to get away. And in the final version of the book, he stole it from a bunch of soldiers, you know, not nice men, which kind of excused what he did, because he's stealing from bad people. So if bad people get left behind to get murdered by vampires, you know, it's not a nice thing to do, but it's not unforgivable. But in the original draft, he stole that horse from a family, like a wife, a husband, and two sweet, wide-eyed, innocent children, just left them behind to die. And I realized after I wrote that scene that I wasn't writing an anti-hero, I was actually writing a villain. So I had to kind of dial that back somewhat. But yeah, hopefully, even when a character is doing a terrible thing, if you understand why, what their rationale is, that stops them straying into outright villainy. That's the theory anyway.
Fair. Which of your characters do you think has kind of changed the most from your first inception of them, or your first kind of idea of them?
It'd be Aaron. In the original version of Vampire, Aaron was he was just a Draco Malfoy type. He was just a little blonde shit at school. He was going to give Gabe some grief in the young Gabe storyline, and I had rough ideas that he might come back in book 3, maybe as an antagonist. But when I was writing the initial draft of Vampire, it was kind of ballooning out of control in terms of word count. I probably wrote, I don't know, 450,000 words, and the book is only 240, I think. And things were kind of ballooning out of control in terms of scope, and so I had to edit. I had to cut a bunch of stuff out and combine a bunch of other stuff. And initially there was another character entirely who was having the relationship with Baptiste, and he just got excised, and I married that plotline into Aaron. And all of a sudden Aaron kind of completely transformed in the narrative in terms of who he was as a person, but also the role he was going to play and the relationship that he had with Gabe. And he just became one of my favorite characters after that point. I couldn't leave him alone, so I couldn't leave him relegated to a third tier character that might show up in book 3. He was just, I really liked that relationship between him and Gabe. Like I was saying before, he's the guy who knows you best. He's the guy who can tell what you're thinking without you needing to explain it. And a couple of the quiet conversations that they have in Dawn are my favorite scenes in the book. So there was something really magical about him, not only in terms of the relationship he forged with Gabe, but also the fact that he became so much more than I initially imagined him to be. He was just really fascinating and fun to play with. So yeah, he's one of my faves. I apologise to all the Aaron stands out there for what happens to him in book 3. No one is having fun in this book. It's important to remember. No one has a good time in Dawn.
Yeah, you could kind of, I suppose, at the end of Damned, you kind of knew that it was going to be.
Yeah. At least I'm an equal opportunity destroyer. No one is having fun. If anyone is having fun in book 3, you know something terrible is about to happen, and I was just giving them a brief moment of respite before I really smack it down. But yeah, it's book 3, so you got to expect that in a finale.
It's got to be done. I mean, the interesting thing, like you touched on there, was there are some kind of quiet moments that you don't always kind of get in the end of a trilogy, right? That normally you're trying to obviously tie off all the loose ends and like deal with all the different characters and you know, running towards some epic battle.
Yeah,
but actually there's some
parts.
real kind of quiet moments that are like very, very touching. Like, how difficult or how easy was it to kind of get that, I suppose, that speed, but also that kind of slowness?
It's actually hard for me. I kind of have to force myself to slow down, and I feel I'm least comfortable as a writer when things are quiet on the page.
Okay.
Like, I much prefer writing, if you give me, you know, an army of 300,000 people smashing into each other and 5 different POVs across a battlefield, 5 different objectives, I can do that standing on my head. That's kind of where I'm most comfortable writing. Kind of high impact, high velocity stuff. It's almost like I can see the film playing on the backs of my eyes, and I'm just transcribing it. I'm least comfortable when it's just 2 people sitting beside a fire talking. But I understand that's when you get to know the characters best. You know, you get to know a character by stress testing them, but also you get to understand what they're thinking when they're alone and they're quiet, or whether, you know, with a single friend having a simple conversation. Those insights to character are really necessary as well. So I have to force myself to put them into the book. But they're often the hardest parts that I have the hardest time writing those, but they ultimately usually end up to be my favorite parts of the book as well, because you're getting more of an insight into who these characters are. You're getting kind of closer to the bone, to the truth of them. So yeah, even though I have trouble writing them, I know they're absolutely necessary, and yeah, they usually end up being my favorite parts of the book. They're just harder to get to. It's just the way my brain works. I don't know, but I've learned enough to know that I have to kind of force myself to do it, because at the end of the day, they end up being the coolest parts of the book, at least from my perspective. Not as much fun, much harder to get to. I know when I'm sitting down to write, if I'm writing a battle scene, you know, I usually try and get 2,000 words a day.
Okay.
That's kind of my word count limit. I know that at the start of the day, if I'm writing a battle scene, I'll probably be done by lunchtime. If I'm writing one of those quiet scenes where 2 people are just talking, it's probably going to take me all day, or maybe most of the next day as well. It's just harder for me to write. It's just the way my brain is.
It's quite interesting because obviously you talk very, very well about your books, about your life, about everything, but writing it is a whole different thing, right? Having like a one-on-one kind of conversation and actually, I suppose, making it feel meaningful to the book. Do you think, now that you've mentioned obviously finding it difficult, do you think kind of with the next series, does it get easier, or will that always be a bit of a challenge for you?
Probably. I mean, in theory, the more you do a thing, the better you get at it. And I don't know if it will ever be easy, but it's probably easier.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, it's just one of those things I know I'm always going to be more comfortable in, because I think visually, because I kind of see the film of the book, so to speak.
Right.
It's always easier for me when there's motion on the page. It's easy to transcribe it. But hopefully this, the thing that I'm working on now is my 19th novel, so hopefully I've got better at it with time. And like I say, even though it might be easier, it's probably never going to be easy for me. That's just the way I am as a writer. But like I say, those scenes, even though they're tough, they usually end up being the most rewarding in the end.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's because you were a designer, weren't you? Maybe it's that kind of part of your brain that is like seeing that visual picture.
I think it is. Kind of visually brained. And it's strange to see, but it's like I'm watching a movie in my head when I'm writing. So describing when there's high speed, high impact action happening on the page, that's the closest I get to flow state, so to speak, where I'm literally just a conduit for the thing that I'm seeing in the back of my eyes. It's harder to do that when it's a moment of quiet, when there's not a lot of motion on the page. But I think it probably does come from the fact that I trained as a designer and went to art college, and I've always kind of been a visual thinker, so that's probably at the root of it. Left-brained, I think it is. Left brain, right brain, I'm not sure. One of those hemispheres anyway.
So I remember last time you were here, we were talking about the very inventive language and swear words that you have running throughout. And last time I think it was it Cockwomble was one of your favourite,
it's a good one.
Newer kind of new to you. Is there anything you've picked up for this particular book that?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it just comes from being Australian. Oh, there is a good one in the third book. I picked that up from a buddy of mine who works construction. He's a concrete layer. If you've ever spent any time with dudes who work construction, they're pretty hardcore. It's a turn of phrase, quite lovely. It's, I would rather shit in my hands and clap, to describe a thing that you don't want to do. Would you like a cup of coffee? I'd rather shit in my hands and clap. It's a firm no.
Wow. I like that.
Yeah, so that's my buddy Andrew.
Nice. We sometimes get, when we're doing Comic-Con, we get the guys come over from the warehouse and we hear some very interesting turns of phrase when they're helping us with Comic-Con.
Yeah, they're good value.
Yeah. Always good fun. And so for our last couple of questions, so what are you working on next? Like, I think it's already sold. And
we actually sold it. We sold it back in 2021. Advice for new authors out there: if you're selling in your next series, you should sell it in very soon after the first book in your current series has dropped, because you're never moving as much paper as you are during that first week of release in the first book. One of my publisher's representatives is behind me, so I'm letting some industry secrets go now. But you're never as shiny to your publisher as you are in that first couple of weeks. So we pitched that idea back in 2021, very shortly after Vampire published, but we couldn't talk about it until we were coming to the end of the Vampire cycle, because obviously who cares what's going to happen 4 years from now. But it's similar in tone to Empire and Nevernight. It's kind of dark fantasy. It's more of a gang of characters rather than a single focused character story like Gabe or Mia in the Empire and Nevernight books. We pitched it as Inglourious Bastards meets Game of Thrones. So it's kind of a gang of half demons led by a half angel. It's less quest-based fantasy. It's kind of fixed location. The inspiration for the city in which it's set is post-World War II Berlin. when the city was kind of chopped in half by the Soviets and the United States. So it's this formerly war-torn locale that's been chopped in half by two ruling powers, and the action kind of takes place between East and West. And it's a little funnier, I guess. The Empire books were pretty grim and pretty heavy, so the tone of this is a little closer to the footnotes in Nevernight. It's a little more, some of it is a little more tongue-in-cheek, but it's multi-POV. I think there's 6 main characters, which is a little bit different to what I've done in the previous dark fantasy that I've written. I did that in my YA stuff, my sci-fi stuff, but I've not done it in epic fantasy before, which is a lot of fun. And I'm at the 3/4 mark now. I'm almost done. So the goal is to have it finished by March next year. So I'm kind of at the oh shit moment right now, like the where everything goes horribly wrong and how are they going to pull that out of the fire moment. But I'm also doing things a little bit weird in terms of design and typography, and there's a form of chaos magic in the book where when people are using it on the page, it influences the way the page is laid out. So I'm kind of falling back on that design, visual arts background, and having a little more fun with the idea of the book itself. I like kind of pushing the idea of what a book can be and do, because they haven't really changed all that much in kind of 500-600 years. So even though you're dealing with, you know, a slab of pages bound together with ink on them, I like to try and do something a little bit different in the borders of that envelope that I'm given to play in. So yeah, I'm kind of at the point now where things are getting pretty weird in terms of design and layout. And there's going to be an illustrated component to it as well. I really liked that in the Empire books. There's just something cool about having a visual element to the books themselves. And I've heard from a lot of readers as well. There's a condition, I can't pronounce it, I'm not even going to try. But you can't see, you can't imagine visually. I had this really interesting moment on Twitter where I saw a poll posted, kind of there were 4 apples in a row. One of them was super high-res photographic, and they, you know, reduced in fidelity until the one on the right was just a green blob. And they said, close your eyes and picture an apple. Which one of these do you see? I thought everyone just saw the high-res one on the left, but apparently some people have a lot of difficulty seeing visually. So I think having an illustrated component in the books helps readers like that put themselves into the books better. So yeah, I'm going to use illustrations again in the Mutiny, working with Gonzalo again, who was the illustrator in Empire of the Dawn. He's just awesome to work with, works really hard. We kind of get each other, and you know, we've been working together for almost a year now on the Dawn project, so we know each other pretty well now. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. It's coming together suspiciously well. I'm waiting for the wheels to fly off, which might happen any day now, but I've been writing it kind of solidly for the last year and a bit, and yeah, the idea is to have it done by March next year, so keep fingers crossed. Exciting. Well,
thank you so much. That sounds incredible. You'll have to come back.
Yeah,
talk
I would love to.
I'm sure you'll be.
Presuming the wheels don't fly off.
Presuming the wheels don't fly off. But yeah, thank you so much, Jay, for joining us. The series has been incredible, and yeah, we can't wait to see the next book.
Thanks so much for your support. Appreciate you guys. Ciao.
See you next time. Bye.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.